don't normally do record store day, and this spring's record store day was no exception. The weather was good. I went out for a bike ride instead. But come the afternoon of record store day itself, I started seeing videos appearing in the vinyl community about all these great things that people had bought. And come the evening, I thought, oh, this fear of missing out, this FOMO was starting to get to me. And I thought, I really missed the excitement and the enjoyment of actually going to a record store day and rubbing shoulders with, people like us, and chatting about music. So come the evening, I went online and looked at record fairs in my area in the Midlands in the UK. And I saw there was a record fair in a place called Bilston, which is near Wolverhampton, where Robert Plant comes from, I understand. Well, at least Wolverhampton. And Sunday morning I went off to a record fair. And these are my goodies. And I've listened to them in the last week or so. And want to share some of those things with you. But first, about record fairs. I'm not a regular attendee at record fairs. I've already got far too much music to listen to. But whisper that quietly, don't tell my other half. And but occasionally I will go along to see if I can pick up some bargains. And I see these videos from the United States and Canada, and of these record fairs, and I see these beautiful, great big halls or community centres or whatever it might be, and they're beautifully lit, and there's loads of very high quality vinyl on show, and people milling around, and there's not that hurried thing that you get in a flash sale or something like that. And I thought, look, those are record fairs. That's the ideal record fair. Well, this record fair that I went to in Bilston was at a place called The Robin, which is a venue for up-and-coming bands and those that are on the wane on the kind of heritage circuit. And you go in there, and I went in there anyway, and I've never been there. I'd often wanted to go, but I've never actually been. But I went up for this record fair, and you walk into this place, and it's all painted black. There's the stink of stale beer, and the lighting is terrible. Perfect for a gig. It must be a great night out if one of your favourite bands is there. But for a record fair, you can't see anything. So you're flipping through albums, and I'll say something about that in a second, and you pick out an album, and you can't tell. There's no light to tell. Is that scratched, or is it grubby, or is there something going wrong? So there's people there with phones with their torches on, and I think Embryonic Robot Brian was saying something similar just the other day, and it was literally just the same experience. And you kind of think, well, what am I buying here? And I immediately decided I'm not going to spend any significant amount of money on anything that was truly valuable, because until I got outside or got it under a proper lamp, I wouldn't really tell whether it was worth the money. But one final thing about record fairs, well, two things really. One, I think the sellers these days in record fairs, I think they sell the good stuff online, and what you've got is the volume of their stock that sits in these record fairs. And the thing what was a real bugbear of mine is that you go to a record fair, there are dozens or a dozen, maybe more, of vendors there, all with these plastic crates, and they're all of them, without exception, overstuffed. You want to get around reasonably quickly. You want to flip through the plastic containers and see what's available. Something catches your eye, but you can't do that. You've got to use two hands. You've got to pull them out, put it back in, and it just takes you forever. And I just cannot understand why these vendors want to stuff their crates with too much content, because I'm sure that if it's easy to flip through, they'd get more people passing through their stall, and probably more people buying stuff. I'm sure that I missed stuff that was worth having. But anyway, some general thoughts about record fairs. I'm not a regular, probably won't become a regular, but I did buy some stuff. So let's go through what I bought. See if any of this makes sense. I didn't spend a lot of money. Let me just tell you, maybe my most exciting purchase was some coasters. Automatic for the people, Revolver, of course, great artwork, can't argue with that. I think that's the first Zeppelin album. I haven't got my glasses on at the minute, but the first Zeppelin album's label, the Plum label. I don't have a copy, sadly. And of course, The Who, My Generation. 4 great coasters. It'll be a shame to get some coffee stains on them. Anyway, what did I buy? Well, the first one, for £3, was Streets of This Town by Steve Forbert. I didn't realise that I'd already had this on vinyl. I'd had it on CD for years. Not a huge fan, but this has got some lovely lyrics. Great. It sounds fantastic. It's wonderfully recorded. It's kind of a singer-songwriter with a band backing. Rick Springfield, Bruce Springsteen influences. I'm sure there are others in there as well, but nice singer. As I say, great lyrics, good songs. Anyway, this was a promo copy, and as I say, it cost me £3, so worth a punt. This one here, Jim Capaldi, Whale Meet Again. Jim Capaldi, of course, from Traffic. This album had been on my radar since 1974 when it was released, but I wasn't a huge Traffic fan in those days. They peaked before I was really starting to buy music, and they kind of passed me by. Although I've acquired lots of their stuff in ever since, as it were. But this is good. Typical Traffic style. It's kind of more funky than a typical Traffic album. It kind of grooves along quite nicely. You can tell it's kind of this island. I think it's island label. Let's have a look here. Oh yeah, it's got the lovely island label. There you go. Typical early 70s island label. Kind of the great and the good showing up to do their bit for one of the rock music's gentry, Jim Capaldi. But a good album, worth having. If you like Traffic, you probably already know about it. This was a different one. Electric Rendezvous by Al Di Meola, the jazz fusion guitarist, a flamenco guitarist. And I bought another one, in fact. This one, Splendido Hotel, which is a double. This is great. This really kind of is very, very rhythmic, with just super clean guitar, very just gorgeous. Instrumental stuff, of course, but this one is more eclectic, kind of rambles on a little bit, really, maybe a bit like me, but hey ho. This one is the one to get, although people who are real aficionados of Al Di Meola would recommend that too, I'm sure. Two good ones though. Victims of the Fury by Robin Trower, the ex-guitarist of Procol Harum, him of the Power Trio, that really creamy guitar with James Dewar on wonderfully soulful vocals. This is not one of the best albums, not very well recorded, but it's in the collection. Something which is, I've seen, many times. I've always wondered what it is, and that it's music from Free Creek. And this is kind of like a jam session, big jam session. Eric Clapton, Dr. John, who else is on here? Keith Emerson on keyboards, and lots of band members from famous bands like the Janis Joplin's, Todd Rundgren's on here, Delaney and Bonnie, Buddy Rich, Paul Butterfield Blues Band, and many others. And that's kind of it's what you would expect it to be. It's a whole bunch of musicians in the studio for a relatively short period of time, jamming together, doing covers of famous tracks and Beatles tracks. There's a Stones tracks in here, Dylan tracks, of course, definitely Dylan's tracks. But yeah, really good. It's on the famous Charisma label, which is one of the reasons why it caught my attention. It was £2 for a double album in mint or near mint condition, and a perfect reissue for Record Store Day 2025. I'm sure it would be a big seller. Linda Ronstadt's Lush Life with Nelson Riddle and his orchestra. This is full on Nelson Riddle. The big lush orchestra sounds, a la Frank Sinatra. I like Linda Ronstadt, but I think her vocals, these sort of arrangements and the purity of that Nelson Riddle 50s sound, I think kind of exposes some limitations in her voice. So I listened to this, I listened to side one, I thought, no, I'll go back to Julie London or something like that. Not really great, even though I do like Linda. This one here, Rhiannon Giddens, You're the One. This was a new album picked up. I bought a few new albums that were sold to me for about £8 or £9 each, which was a steal. This is kind of, again, a very eclectic mix, a bit of country, a bit of folk, bit of kind of modern, bit of R&B, not so much maybe, but I need to listen to that a few more times before I can make my mind up about it. But pleasantly surprised, a blind buy, as it were. I'd never heard anything from her before. I talked about Traffic before. I bought this one. This was a new one, same price as before. Shootout at the Fantasy Factory, a later album of theirs, 19. Oh, it's just got the reissue of 2019 on this. But this is about 1974, I think it is, and it's great. It's just not one of their most favorite albums, and it's amazing that you read the music magazines and back in the day and the newspapers, and you kind of, there becomes sort of a consensus around what is a band's best albums, and the ones that aren't in the top 2 or 3 kind of fall away. But when you come back to them with fresh ears, without all that, the drumbeat of this is the must-have album, or this didn't make the cut, these albums are great. I mean, this is still a very, very good album. Steve Winwood's vocals are great, and you've got Jim Capaldi as well, and it's just good, just good. Can't argue with it. The Waterboys, Good Luck Seeker. One of the later albums from Mike Scott. This is probably too much music on one LP. 14 tracks there. Very rhythmic. That soul thing. He's definitely gone away from the Fisherman Blues vibes or the big music sound of the first 2 or 3 albums. But this is still pleasant. The stuff on side 2, there's a bit kind of a spoken word style. He's not really singing so much. Telling stories, but good, really good. Nice to have that in the collection. The Sleaford Mods, UK Grim. I don't know if you know the Sleaford Mods, but imagine kind of a Billy Bragg social commentary of the early Billy Bragg, of course, but this with an electronica background, lots of beats, and the vocals more spat out in a rap style by Jason here, and just fantastic. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I saw them live one time, and they were absolutely great. It was about 5 years ago or something. But it was just so different to anything else. You got this guy whose lyrics are really like poetry, and they really depict what life is like living on, what we call a council estate, pretty deprived conditions, questionable behavior by your neighbors, all the drug dealing stuff and the drug taking that goes on, and it's kind of it does depict the grimness of life at the bottom of society. But he's these guys are kind of social campaigners as well, and respect to them. They've got their viewpoint, they've got they're writing stuff that's interesting, and it is good stuff. I enjoy it. Something quite different was a more recent album by Todd Rundgren called State. This is electronica experimentation. It's not the 70s kind of ballady style that he was famous for, or the prog stuff that he did with Utopia. But it's still remarkable that after all these years, this guy is still experimenting and doing interesting stuff. So that's really good too. And the last one I bought was from Emmylou Harris, and it's And the Nash Ramblers, Ramble in Music City. It's a double live album. It's not the Emmylou Harris of the Daniel Lanois, Wrecking Ball, Red Dirt Girl kind of period where, you know, Lanois would be sprinkling a bit of his ambient magic on, at least on the first of those two albums. This is more kind of a traditional, typical bluegrassy, countrified sound from Emmylou's earlier albums. I've got to be in the mood for this stuff, and I listened to this on Sunday last, and I was in the mood for it. It was really good. So if you like Emmylou Harris, that's definitely worth picking up. Double album, again, bought it for peanuts. So there you go. So that's what I bought at a record fair last weekend, and last weekend, or it was maybe the weekend before. And some of the stuff behind me here is I did eventually get in amongst some Record Store Day stuff, although not Record Store Day 2024 exclusively. I think there's only one in this pile behind me that was released just a couple of weeks ago, or less than a couple of weeks ago. So anyway, I'll talk about those in due course when I get to listen to them all. I'm working my way through them. So I will see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.